Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupada Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad is Divine Grace. Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So we'll be on page 66 today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. So on the 8th day of February 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 2, entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized, text number 3 at the bottom of page 66. But before I begin, I forgot to announce this morning, today is Bhīṣmashtaki. Bhīṣmashtaka means the appearance day of Bhīṣma Dev, who's one of the 12 Mahajans, great authorities on devotional service. So we should remember him today. And it is Yamuna Tira, by the way. Y, long A, M-U-N, short A, T-I-R-A, instead of Yamuna Tira. Because Yamuna is just a regular nominative, but Yamuna means of the Yamuna. So it becomes Yamuna Tira. It's a little note. Okay, text number 3. Klaibhyam ma smagama Partha naitat tvai upapadyate chudram vidyadaubalyam chakvortishtha parantapa klaibhyam masmagamak Partha naitat tvai upapadyate chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha Naitattvai upapadyate Chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha Naitattvai upapadyate Chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha Naitattvai upapadyate Chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha Naitattvai upapadyate Chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha Naitattvai upapadyate Chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa Arjuna. Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha Naitattvai upapadyate Chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa Anandamata. Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha Naitattvai upapadyate Chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa. Manji? Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha Naitattvai upapadyate Chudram vidyadaubalyam Chakvortishta parantapa. Zoomland.
Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha
Klaibhyam masmagamak Partha
Naitattvai upapadyate
Naitattvai upapadyate
Kshudram Vidaya Daurbalyam
Chudram vidyadaubalyam
Chakvortishta parantapa.
Chakvortishta parantapa. Klaibhyam, impotence. Masma, do not. Gamaha, take to. Partha, O son of Pritha. Na, never. Eta, this. Tvahi, unto you. Upapadyate, is befitting. Chudram, petty. Vidya, of the heart, Daurbalyam, weakness, Tyaktva, giving up, Uttishta, get up, Parantapa, O chastiser of the enemies. So Krishna is speaking to Arjuna. O son of Pritha, do not yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. Purport. Arjuna was addressed as the son of Pritha, who happened to be the sister of Krishna's father, Vasudeva. Therefore, Arjuna had a blood relationship with Krishna. If the son of a Kshatriya declines to fight, he is a Kshatriya in name only. And if the son of a Brahman acts impiously, he is a Brahman in name only. Such Kshatriyas and Brahmins are unworthy sons of their fathers. Therefore, Krishna did not want Arjuna to become an unworthy son of a Kshatriya. Arjuna was the most intimate friend of Krishna, and Krishna was directly guiding him on the chariot. But in spite of all these credits, if Arjuna abandoned the battle, he would be committing an infamous act. Therefore, Krishna said that such an attitude in Arjuna did not fit his personality. Arjuna might argue that he would give up the battle on the grounds of his magnanimous attitude for the most respectable Bhīṣma and his relatives, but Krishna considered that sort of magnanimity mere weakness of heart. Such false magnanimity was not approved by any authority. Therefore, such magnanimity or so-called non-violence should be given up by persons like Arjuna under the direct guidance of Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So one thing to note here is that Krishna's advice, these two verses 2 and 3, in which he's responding to Arjuna's whole presentation of how he can't fight because what's the point? I'll enjoy this kingdom, but it'll be soaked with the blood of my relatives, and I don't see any point in it. Plus, I'll be killing my beloved guru or teacher, and Bhīṣma Dev, the honored grandfather of all the Kurus and Pandavas. So he had his arguments. We know them from the first chapter. But Krishna is not accepting it. He first, in the previous verse, he said, this is non-Aryan. Arya is a very important term, Aryan. Prabhupada said, basically one who understands and lives according to the spiritual values of life is an Aryan. This is really what Aryan is. And that means that you're always seeing the broadest implication of your activities, and you're focusing on the ultimate goal of life, which is spiritual, not material. So this battle wasn't simply a battle for the kingdom. This was a battle for Dharma. This is a battle to reinstitute Dharma in this world. In a few chapters, in the 4th chapter, Krishna famously says, I know half of you at least know this verse by heart, Yadayadahi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutanam dharmasya tadatmanam sajamiham. Whenever and wherever, we're on page 64, 66, I'm sorry, 66. Whenever and wherever there is an upsurge of irreligion and irreligion predominates in this world, I manifest myself. Why? Partanaya sadhunam, in order to protect the sadhus, the devotees, annihilate the miscreants, and reinstitute Dharma in this world. Why does Krishna care about Dharma? Because without Dharma, we're not even human beings. Dharma nahina pashabhi samana, it's famously said. We share so many things with the animals. They eat, we defend, they defend, we sleep, they sleep, we procreate, they procreate. So it's just, if that's our main focus in life, then we're no better than animals. But Krishna's not pleased with it. Why does he care? Because he's our father. He says, I am the aham bija pradakpita. I am the father of every living entity. And he accompanies us as the super soul in every body, not just human bodies. Always giving us instruction, giving us intelligence and remembrance, and trying to guide us, especially in the human form, to do the right thing for our ultimate benefit and to return home back to God. And as I've said before, we can't hear him in there, but so he comes outside in the form of the teacher, the great acharyas and gurus, and also he leaves his book and he tries to instruct us in that way. So at this point, Arjuna is now representing conditioned souls. What is the basic principle of what Arjuna's doing? He's not listening to his intelligence so much. He's listening to his gut. He's doing everything by emotion. And that's located in all of these personal relationships he has with the members of the opposite side, the opposing army. And so that's taken over his mind. And he can't fight with the same kind of determination that he has in many times before. So he's paralyzed. And Krishna has said, where the previous verse, how have you, these impurities come upon you? They're not at all befitting a man who knows the values of life, the Aryan. They lead not to higher planets, but to infamy. And then the present verse, O son of Prita, don't yield to this degrading impotence. It does not become you. Give up such petty weakness of heart and arise, O chastiser of the enemy. Now this is like standard Kshatriya talk. The charioteer is supposed to buck up the fighter when things like this happen. If he gets injured, and famously he took Pradyumna from the battlefield. Remember when he was knocked out? Pradyumna was very angry. You took me from the battlefield. Now I'll be criticized everywhere. He's not supposed to be taken, but he was unconscious, so he did the right thing. So here Krishna is trying to, encourage Arjuna to be a Kshatriya. Now, this phrase, Hridaya Daulbalyam, is very interesting, very important, because this Hridaya Daulbalyam, which is weakness of heart, which is determination, is also one of the great impediments to devotional service. Because devotional service is also a battle. And actually, most of that battle is internal. At the end of the next chapter, Krishna will have a whole little section on kama. How kama, or lust, not just sex desire, but all kinds of very strong desires to enjoy in this world. That's all part of lust, kama. Is the what is he called? The all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. That's your real enemy, Arjuna. Not the opposing army. It's internal. And we all have that enemy. Why is it an enemy? Because that material desire covers our real knowledge. Avritam gyanametana gyanino nityavaidina. Nityavaidina means the eternal enemy. So that's our real battle. How to control the senses, which are the repositories of lust, mind, and intelligence, he says, and direct the senses and the mind and the intelligence toward Krishna. Link them up in yoga, bhakti yoga, through the process of devotional service. And it's not easy, because we're so habituated, many, many lifetimes, of letting the senses run outside and control us and like that. So these instructions of Krishna and his representatives can strengthen our intelligence, so we have the strength to control the lower self. Krishna says in that section, third chapter, Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bharatarshava papanam pratihiyanam jnana vijnananashanam. Therefore, in the beginning of what? Beginning of our practice of bhakti yoga, you have to control the senses. Niyamya bharatarshava papanam, and this way conquer over this sinful enemy of lust, jnana, which is the destroyer of knowledge and realization. So it all depends on how we direct our senses. And really, the key to the whole thing is the Hare Krishna mantra. Because the Hare Krishna mantra, even if we chant it, not purely, which we won't at the beginning, it's so powerful that if we even just half hear it, it's going to draw us toward Krishna and give us the spiritual strength to engage in devotional service, rather than say, okay, that was interesting, now I'm going to go something else. It happens that way sometimes. But if you show a little determination and you understand the philosophy, which is available in so many ways, so many books Prabhupada gave us, we can establish a beachhead, as it were, in this battle against the lower self, and actually advance in devotional service, even in this Kali Yuga. So the beginning here, Arjuna is not convinced right now, and he has a few more verses in which he's more or less summarizing his argument, and then he'll give it all up. He said, okay, I forget it. Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava. Now I don't know what I'm doing. So now I'm surrendering unto you. You please instruct me for my ultimate benefit. I'm surrendering as a guru. And the first thing Krishna does is chastise him. You're speaking like a learned man, giving all these arguments from the Vedas, but you don't know what you're talking about. Because you're lamenting for what's not lamentable. This gross body, which is already dead and is just animated by the soul. So this is all very dramatic, and we can find where our own life intersects with this whole drama that we're seeing here. Okay, any discussion on this verse? Text 3. Let us go on. Text 4. Arjuna Vacha. Katam Bhīṣmamaham Sankye. Dronam cha Madhusudana. It should be Pratiyotsyami. Pujarha Vadisudana. So it's very auspicious. Bhīṣma has appeared in the verse. It's his appearance day. Arjuna said, O killer of enemies, O killer of Madhu, how can I counteract with arrows in battle men like Bhīṣma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship? Purport. Respectable superiors like Bhīṣma, the grandfather, and Dronacharya, the teacher, are always worshipable. Even if they attack, they should not be counterattacked. It is a general etiquette that superiors are not to be offered even a verbal fight. Even if they are sometimes harsh in behavior, they should not be harshly treated. Then, how is it possible for Arjuna to counterattack them? Would Krishna ever attack his own grandfather, Ugrasen, or his teacher, Sandipani Muni? These were some of the arguments offered by Arjuna to Krishna. All right, let's go on. Guru nahat pahi mahanubhavan Shreho bhuktum bhaikshyamapiha loke Hatvata kamangs tu guru nihaiva Bunjiha bhogan hridada pratigdhan. It would be better to live in this world by begging than to live at the cost of the lives of great souls who are my teachers. Even though desiring worldly gain, they are superiors. If they are killed, everything we enjoy will be tainted with their blood, and has been fixed to their blood. Purport. According to scriptural codes, a teacher who engages in an abominable action and has lost his sense of discrimination is fit to be abandoned. Bhīṣma and Drona were obliged to take the side of Duryodhana because of his financial assistance, although they should not have accepted such a position simply on financial considerations. Under the circumstances, they have lost the respectability of teachers. But Arjuna thinks that nevertheless they remain his superiors, and therefore to enjoy material profits after killing them would mean to enjoy spoils tainted with their blood. Okay, continuing his argument. Nachaitan vidma katadan no gariyo yadva jayem yadiva no jayehu yane bahotpa najijiva shamas te bastita pramukhe darta rastraha. Nor do we know which is better, conquering them or being conquered by them. If we kill the sons of Dhritarashtra, we should not care to live. Yet they are now standing before us on the battlefield. Purport. Arjuna did not know whether he should fight and risk unnecessary violence, although fighting is the duty of the Kshatriyas, or whether he should refrain and live by begging. If he did not conquer the enemy, begging would be his only means of subsistence. Nor was there certainty of victory, because either side might emerge victorious. Even if victory awaited them and their cause was justified, still, if the sons of Dhritarashtra died in battle, it would be very difficult to live in their absence. Under the circumstances, that would be another kind of defeat for them. All these considerations by Arjuna definitely proved that not only was he a great devotee of the Lord, but he was also highly enlightened and had complete control over his mind and senses. His desire to live by begging, although he was born in the royal household, is another sign of detachment. He was truly virtuous, as these qualities, combined with his faith in the words of instruction of Sri Krishna, his spiritual master, indicate. It is concluded that Arjuna was quite fit for liberation. Unless the senses are controlled, there is no chance of elevation to the platform of knowledge. And without knowledge and devotion, there is no chance of liberation. Arjuna was competent in all these attributes over and above his enormous attributes in his material relationships. So, what comes out of this paragraph here, which is the last paragraph of Arjuna's argument, really. In the next verse, he surrenders and everything changes. Is that the whole thing is a play. Krishna is actually a great maestro, director. You read the Krishna book, you read the 10th canto, and you can see that Krishna is arranging things in such a way that he's increasing the high level of emotion, of attachment for him in so many ways. And a perfect example is the Kaliya serpent pastime, where this Kaliya takes over a whole lake within the river, and he's got 100 heads, and he's like he's got a python. He's poisonous, and he's poisoned the whole area, and water pollution. And birds can't even fly over it. They'd fall into the water, and his friends drink, and they all die. He brings them back to life. So it's a horrible situation. So what does Krishna do? Of course, it's a challenge him. So he jumps in. He's not affected by the poison. He jumps in and starts fighting with this serpent, or circling around. But then the serpent grabs him, and he holds him there. And so Krishna has this role of this delicate little boy. He looks like that. And that's why he evokes the love of the mothers and so forth. He's not, four-armed. He's certainly not the universal form, which Arjuna sees. So all these bad omens come, and then the residents come. They follow his footprints, and they come and they probably see this scene and are just distraught, and not just the parents and the gopis and the friends, but the animals, the cows. Everyone is on the bed. They're just wailing in agony at Krishna's apparent demise, and he doesn't break. He doesn't do anything. He's just in there, and they're distraught. And then after 2 hours, I think it is, he sees the extreme nature of it, and they're some of them on the point of death, from this emotion. So then he breaks out. He breaks out of that coil. He starts dancing on the hoods of the serpent, which was completely unexpected at that time. Now we know the past. And then there's the Gandharvas start playing and singing. The drums are beating and the whole thing. So that's one example. And even then later, it gets late. They're on the banks, and then they say, "Well, we'll take rest on these nice soft sands of the bank of the Yamuna." They're all there. What happens? Who remembers? Forest fire. Suddenly there's a big fire. And so instead of Krishna being in danger, now they're in danger. And so they call out what are they going to do? They call out to Krishna, and he swallows all the fire. It's gone. So the point is he's engineering these experiences for those people who he loves so much that they're always going to be in great emotion, either crying out to him in desperation to be saved, or crying out that he will be saved to God. They don't think he's God, So the similar thing is happening here on the battlefield, is that Krishna's engineered this whole situation. You can imagine the drama here. You have millions of soldiers on each side. All these elephants and horses are all raring to go. The battle's about to begin. And then the protagonist in the battle is hesitant. And so this conversation takes place. And how long did it take? Prabhupada says 45 minutes. Have you ever tried to chant these 700 verses in 45 minutes? It's really fast. But somehow or other, he understood the whole thing in 45 minutes. So it's all engineered by Krishna. So when Prabhupada says he was truly virtuous, he was ready to give up all the kingdom. So even his hesitancy to do it was on the platform of compassion, really, although it was misplaced. But it went completely against the larger scheme of Krishna, which was for the good of the whole world and eliminate all the demonic forces. And all of them who died would be awarded very high, may go back to God because they died in the presence of Krishna. And nobody dies, right? That's one of the first things. Then Jayate, Mriyate. I'm not going to say the poem. So that's the first lesson. You don't die. You're thinking in terms of the body, but the body is just a vehicle. It's just a coat, Okay, so you're going to force people to take off their present coat. But nobody's dying. And because they're on the battlefield, I'm here, they'll all be exalted, So anyway, that comes in. And here, but Arjuna's statement here is that he's showing all the opposite qualities of an actual Kshatriya. I don't know whether it's best for them to win or me to win. No. I mean, if you have that attitude, there's no way you can fight. Maybe they'll be better if they beat me, So, and then this most amazing statement that I don't want to live in the absence of the Dhartarashtras. Those are the sons of Dhritarashtra, who made all kinds of arrangements to try to kill them, but he's all saying, I can't live without them. Can you imagine how soft his heart is, really? Very amazing statement. And then comes this key verse in the chapter 7, text 7 here. So, why don't we do that one? Karpanya dosho pahata swabhava Prachami tvam dharma sammuda chetaha Yakshe yaksya nishtitam bruhitan me Shishyasteham shadimam tvam papannam. Now I am confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I am asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Purport. By nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. In every step there is perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. One time out. Sorry. Hare Krishna. All Vedic literatures advise us to approach a bona fide spiritual master to get free from the perplexities of life, which happen without our desire. They are like a forest fire that somehow blazes without being set by anyone. Similarly, the world situation is such that perplexities of life automatically appear without our wanting such confusion. No one wants fire, and yet it takes place, and we become perplexed. The Vedic wisdom therefore advises that in order to solve the perplexities of life and to understand the science of the solution, one must approach a spiritual master who is in the disciplic succession. A person with a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. One should not, therefore, remain in material perplexities, but should approach a spiritual master. This is the purport of this verse. Who is the man in material perplexities? It is he who does not understand the problems of life. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad 3.8.10, the perplexed man is described as follows. Yo va eta raksharam gargya vidit vasma lokat praiti sakripanaha. He is a miserly man who does not solve the problems of life as a human, and who thus quits this world like the cats and dogs, without understanding the science of self-realization. This human form of life is the most valuable asset for the living entity, who can utilize it for solving the problems of life. Therefore, one who does not utilize this opportunity properly is a miser. On the other hand, there is the Brahmana, or he who is intelligent enough to utilize this body to solve all the problems of life. Yahita rakshadam gargi vidit basma lokat praiti sat brahmanaha. The Kripanas, or miserly persons, waste their time in being overly affectionate for family, society, country, etc., in the material conception of life. One is often attached to family life, namely to wife, children, and other members, on the basis of skin disease. The Kripana thinks that he is able to protect his family members from death, or the Kripana thinks that his family or society can save him from the verge of death. Such family attachment can be found even in the lower animals who take care of children also, offspring also. Being intelligent, Arjuna could understand that his affection for family members and his wish to protect them from death were the causes of his perplexities. Although he could understand that his duty to fight was awaiting him, still on account of miserly weakness, he could not discharge the duties. He is therefore asking Lord Krishna, the Supreme Spiritual Master, to make a definite solution. He offers himself to Krishna as a disciple. He wants to stop friendly talks. Talks between the master and the disciple are serious, And now Arjuna wants to talk very seriously before the recognized spiritual master. Krishna is therefore the original spiritual master of the science of the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna is the first disciple for understanding the Gita. How Arjuna understands the Bhagavad Gita is stated in the Gita itself. And yet foolish mundane scholars explain that one need not submit to Krishna as a person, but to the unborn within Krishna. There is no difference between Krishnas within and without, and one who has no sense of this understanding is the greatest fool in trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita. So I don't know if you picked up on that, but this happens periodically. Dr. Radhakrishnan in his Bhagavad Gita in 934, which is the most confidential knowledge, Manmana bhavamat bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru mama veshasi yukpaivam atmanamat parayana. Just think of me. This is most confidential. Think of me, become my devotee, offer your homage to me, bow down to me, and worship me. Thus you will certainly come to me, being linked to me in Bhakti Yoga. But in his commentary on that verse, Dr. Radhakrishnan said it's not actually the Krishna that we have to surrender to, but the unborn, eternal within Krishna. And there's a whole history of the Prabhupada's responding to this. If you're interested in his lengthy response, there's a book that came out that's not so famous called Renunciation Through Wisdom. It's a book of Bengali essays that Prabhupada wrote that had been translated into English and edited by Bhakti Charu Swami. And there's a lengthy section there where Prabhupada responds to that. It's a gross misunderstanding. Prabhupada would quote this phrase, Deha dehi vibhagoyam neshure vijate kvachit. This is a Vedic statement, I forget where it's from. That deha, the difference between the soul and the body, which exists for us, basic principle of understanding, does not there for Krishna. There's no difference between his body and his soul. He's solid spirit. He doesn't have a material body. And so to say that there's the unborn within Krishna is just pure ignorance. It's Krishna, the person, who we need to surrender to and serve, and it's only through that personal service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that we can overcome all of this attachment and illusion that we have in relation to this material world. Not by meditation or trying to merge into the Absolute. We need the engagement for all the senses and the mind and intelligence, our whole being, not just the mind fighting with these very stubborn senses. So that's a very important point. And this is a key verse in the Bhagavad Gita because it's a model for how, here's Arjuna, he's perplexed. He's perplexed by his dilemma. And we're also in perplexity. You know, the ordinary person, they're trying very hard to, what does Prabhupada call it, the hard struggle for existence, just living in this world. And then if somehow you have it together, you know, then you try to enjoy. But there's no security. The enjoyment can turn to pain in a minute, and in fact it does. The very seeds of your suffering are these happiness you experience with sense gratification, gross and subtle, because it keeps you bound here. The attachments you develop. If you enjoy something one time, you want to do it again and again and again. And then when you can't enjoy it, that desire will still be in your mind. And then you get another body the next time to try to enjoy it again. It may or may not be a human body. So this has been going on since time immemorial. The human body is a juncture. It is the only form of life where the higher intelligence can give us enlightenment. We can understand what our real situation is. Just like if you have a disease, the first step in getting cured is the diagnosis. Why am I suffering? You go to a doctor, someone who can test the blood, whatever, to find out what the real cause of it is. Then you can treat it. So all of this attempt to mitigate suffering in this world and try to eke out a little enjoyment, it's just exacerbating the disease. It's exacerbating our entanglement in the material energy. Material energy is not our natural home. All of us are in a disease condition of life just because we're in a material body. This is a very revolutionary idea, but this is a fact. You try to adjust things on the material level, and you're just moving from one part of the another analogy is the prison house. That's what Durga means. Durga is the goddess of the material world. That's one name for her. It means you can't go. You're in prison. Durga. You can go from here to there, but you can't get out of the prison. So the whole illusion is we're trying to, probably, from a B class prisoner to an A class prisoner. Oh, now I have more yard privileges. Now I can take a little more walk. Oh, that's a success. No, you want to get out of the prison entirely, don't you? People don't even know that they're in prison. So the diagnosis is here in the Bhagavad Gita, and the prescription for the cure. But it requires this attitude of Arjuna that I can't figure it out. I have to approach someone who really knows. And that's the realized spiritual master, beginning with Krishna. Krishna is going to give this instruction, and those who live according to it and repeat the instruction, they become the actual acharyas. They become the spiritual masters that we can take instruction from. And that's the great value of Srila Prabhupada's books and his institution, because it's an opportunity to learn this instruction and to see it being lived. If there's no examples, it's all theoretical. That was one of Prabhupada's greatest gifts, just himself. You can see the philosophy actually working, and you can see how blissful and transcendentally, Srila Prabhupada was, how learned, how ecstatic, and people were attracted to be like that. And that's how the movement went on and is still going on. So, any questions on this key verse? Karpanya dosho upahata swabhava. Now, one point here, this upahata swabhava means that his real nature had been taken away. This dilemma that he found himself in because of this attachment for members of the other side and bodily attachment, he lost his real nature. He couldn't be a kshatriya anymore. And it was very painful to him. And we'll see, he's distraught, he drops his bow, he's trembling, he's crying, he's in real trouble. So now what's Dharma Samudacheta? This is another one. Dharma, again, is what differentiates us from the animals. So what is the meaning of Dharma? Dharma is the essential nature of something. I always give this example. Forgive me if you heard it about 20 times. If you've only heard it 19 times, then that chair, it has a certain function. What is chairness about a chair? It holds you up. You sit on it and it holds you up, right? And 100, 200, 300 times it's fulfilled its dharma. People have sat on it, listened to the class, not fallen asleep, and they've. But then sometimes when it sits in the chair and it's an old chair, it breaks down. It's not. You land on the floor. It hasn't fulfilled its dharma. Everything's got a dharma. These curtains, it's because you can draw them and block the sun. Oh, okay, they're fulfilling its dharma. So what's our dharma as living entities? Our dharma is that we have to serve. That's the first thing. Even in a disease condition, we're still going to serve something. But the perfection of that service is when we're serving God. We're serving Krishna. And why is it the perfection? Because that service, there's no downside. In other words, it's just different varieties of happiness and bliss. And it's not that, I mean, in ordinary human life, we establish relationships of love and children and wife, husband, and so forth. And that's why? Because we want to be happy. There's something missing, then there's some fulfillment there. But time passes. The wonderful joy of having a child, which will be there, of course. I mean, it's human, And there's a rasa there that's not available anywhere else, And we see its perfection, of course, in Krishna Lila. The mother's love for the child's dependent on the mother. But it's temporary in the human side. The kids grow up. I always like to tell the story of my own mother. She was very saintly. She was a very wonderful mother, very dutiful, and she was faithful to my father. And when he got sick, she took care of him for years. And so I would go and visit her. This was after my father had passed. This was almost more than 40 years ago. It's 87. Is that 35 years ago? So I would go see her. And she was getting elderly, she was in early 80s at that time, but still quite vigorous. And she wanted to just know two things. Are you happy? And are you hungry? And she, what could I eat? You know, so make me some potatoes. I'll put some butter on it. You know, like that. So I mean, she saw me as a little child. You know, just like Mother Yashoda. You know, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna goes there, and they amidst the Brijbasis, they come. So there's Nanda and Yashoda. You know, what do? She takes him on. This Krishna, he's married now with 16,000 wives. She takes him on her lap, and she's crying still. You know, the same relationship is there. So the point is that those relationships can be enjoyed internally with Krishna. He's eternal, we're eternal in the spiritual level. But on the material level, it's all changing. And even if you meet you hit a position of some kind of happiness, it's very tenuous just by the passage of time. And so where is that? How can we find that? You know, we can't find it. So we need to know where to look to find that platform of Satchidananda, which is of eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. And that's with Krishna. And we can even experience to some degree, even in the neophyte stage. There's a different platform here. There's something else going on. You know, I mean, I read this article. It was amazing about the mental problems that people are having by the thousands and millions because of the climate change. Because of that. You know, I remember when I was growing up, I was very sensitive to the socioeconomic things, you know, and it was a war in Vietnam, and then I could never be peaceful. All these people are dying and on this. But this is like the end of the world type of thing. And, you know, young people growing up, how can they be confident or you know, optimistic about the future? It's all being destroyed as around them. They can see that. People don't want to have children, you know, being a child, and, you know, they're thinking the same. Or they get critical of their friends because they're using too much plastic, you know. It's incredible. So how to be free of that? Well, we understand that, yeah, this is a symptom of the gross ignorance in society. All of this artificial, you know, build-up technology, all of this stuff. And so our solution is to become as Krishna conscious as possible, and ourselves get out of it, you know, by going back to Godhead. But in the meantime, to live this philosophy live as simply as possible, and show how one can be happy with very little. That all of this artificial, you know, technology and to try to be happy is counterproductive. It's counterproductive. Living simply, eating simply, and spending one's valuable human life cultivating Krishna consciousness, that's really the source of pleasure. The reservoir of pleasure. Remember that little pamphlet? You know, I think it's still current. It's wonderful. And Prabhupada is explaining how Krishna is the reservoir of pleasure. This holy name in and of itself can give you unlimited happiness because it's transcendental. The 6 Goswamis, they had nothing. They had hardly a few rejected clothes. They lived under a different tree every night. They begged for food, and they hardly slept. The very necessities of life that we think they didn't even have. But they were the richest. I was just reading it. They were the richest in love of Godhead. Gopi bhavata samatabda dahali kalola magno mahor. Again and again, diving and swimming in the ocean of Gopi bhava, of the Gopi's love for Krishna. Completely wholesome. There's nothing, you know, salacious about it at all. Completely wholesome. I mean, these are the greatest sannyasis. They're Goswamis, renunciants. And they're relishing these relationships of Krishna with his friends and his relatives and his Gopi friends. So we can also enter into that. And that's our swabhava. That's our real nature, all of us. And by following this practice and learning Bhagavad Gita and gradually becoming purified is what it is, everything. We can also taste this, even just a drop of it is so potent. And it's available. There it is, Hare Krishna mantra for everybody. Okay, any questions, comments, local or remote? Yes, Bhakta Raj. Hope you don't mind. Call you Bhakta.
Krishna, when he was first accepted as the spiritual leader by Arjuna, the first thing he told him was, don't talk to me like a learned person, lawyer talk in modern terms. I notice many people that in this case the Gita, but all scriptures. They memorize the scriptures in whatever verse. They'll memorize each spot of it, and when they're interacting with other people that have the same knowledge, there simply is memorizing and speaking memorized words. And in Arjun's case, he was simply doing the same thing rather than taking the actual essence of what was said. Would you say those people should be encouraged rather than just be talking in repetitive memorized word to first talk in their own language because they've actually got the insight of what those scriptures are trying to teach them, rather than allow them to speak in those terms?
Yeah, I mean, there can be that where one is simply parroting, verses that are memorized, but there's also the realization of those verses and the sharing of them, enlightening one another. This is Krishna's recommendation. He says in the essential 4 verses, there's 4 essential verses in the 10th chapter, where Krishna says, basically, I'm God. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattak sarvam bhavartade itim buddha bhajante mam buddha bhava samandvita. He says, everything emanates from me. I produce everything. Everything emanates. The wise who understand this perfectly worship me with all their hearts. Then he explains how they do that in one verse. Mat chitta madgata prana bodhiyantak parasvaram katayantas chamam nityam tushyanti chadamanti cha. Now this is of course among the devotees. It's not some dilettantes who have memorized something. He says these are those who understand that I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead and their relationship with me. And so they place their mind on me. They dedicate their life to me, madgata prana, and bodhiyantak parasparam. They come together and they exchange realizations about me, and they read about me, bodhiyantak parasparam, together. And naskantayantas tamam nityam tushyanti chadamanti cha. And they experience great joy and happiness and satisfaction doing that. So this is kirtan. In the 9th chapter, he says, what do the real Mahatmas do? Satatam kirtayanto mam. They're always chanting my glories. So, yatantascha, endeavoring with great energy and determination. Saul, give him a little nudge here. Hare Krishna. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's highly recommended, but it should be sincere and it should be realized. It not should be something that just to show off or whatever. It's really it's one of the most important things that we do. And Prabhupada explained that this whole society was created to give people a formal structure by which we can hear about Krishna, chant kirtan, and everyone is invited to do that, and to experience in that way the benefits of the hearing and chanting about the Lord. So I would say, we have to guard against, just people showing off. But if they're genuinely feeling like they want to share some realization, there's nothing wrong with that. Anyone else? Go ahead, one comment, go ahead, because we're almost out of time.
So, I think I was listening to Prabhupada lecture some time back about repetition. So
about repetition?
Repetition of the message, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He was saying that people repeat, but they don't act, right? So Prabhupada was saying that if the source of the message is pure, then repetition is powerful, because just repeating, like a neophyte, you have to just repeat initially, like whatever.
Yeah.
The source of the Prabhupada says message is correct, then you can repeat, and it's as bona fide as it is as the source. So,
right.
So repetition, like we chant, right? I don't think we understand exactly the true meaning of this Mahamantra, but repeating for 30 years, people become perfect, right?
Well, it depends on the quality of the chanting.
I mean,
you have to work on getting rid of the offenses.
Yeah, at least neophyte stage. If we see somebody is like Prabhu was saying, like repeating but not acting, then we should see that the person or myself is at neophyte stage, haven't realized the message, so it just going on.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of anarthas inside, which is...
Yes, we should work on deepening our understanding. That's why I always encourage the devotees, okay, we're chanting samsara davanadali loka, but don't just let them go by. Let's study, word for words. I took a lot of trouble to expand the songbook so that every verse has the word-by-word meanings. For me, that's the essence of how you can really learn what it means. And then when you chant, the meaning comes out, you share that, and it's that much richer experience. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.